Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Language Leaders Live webinar that we are delivering today. It's now, I'm going to date this because things are going to be changing so rapidly, it's worthwhile. This is the 26th of January, and myself, I'll introduce myself just in case you don't know me. My name is Alex Asher. I'm the CEO of LearnCube. We provide a virtual classroom and all-in-one solution for language schools and language school tutors. And Herbert, tell us a little bit about you, just in case people don't know.
Of course. Hi, my name is Herbert. I'm the founder of Learn Media. We are a digital advertising agency specialized in helping education brands enroll more students for their courses and programs.
Excellent. And today I'm going to be bringing up a little presentation. You've seen that come through, Herbert, hopefully?
Yes.
Fantastic. Today we're looking at, why should education businesses care about this new AI technology that's come out called ChatGPT, and what does it really hold for us? So first of all, we've also, if you haven't seen us before or listened to our show, we also have a podcast called Get More Students, and you'll be able to find an initial conversation about ChatGPT there as well. But here, what we're really going to be talking about is, what it is, how it's applied. I'm going to provide some examples as well. And naturally, there's going to be some kind of concerns around, what does it mean? I think is usually the big question. What does it mean for me? What sort of limitations of the current technology are, how to use it, and really, what are the bigger kind of implications for language education as a sector? So
Great.
Lots to get through.
Looking forward to it.
Now, let's start off with some basic definitions to help everyone kind of get onto the same page here. Now, ChatGPT, it is made by OpenAI, which is a for-profit company. It's got a range of backers, but even initially started with sort of Elon Musk and some other very high-profile tech entrepreneurs based out of the States. What they've created is a chatbot called ChatGPT based on a really amazing machine learning AI model. Now, I don't need to worry so much about the ins and outs of it, but the output is really that you've got a chatbot that is really capable of understanding or responding to us, to humans. Maybe we can kind of talk about what can it do as well. One thing I wanted to flag actually was first of all, the presentation that I'm sharing is actually also done through AI. So this is a tool called Tome, and it's just for a bit of fun. You can just pop in any topic. In this case, it was ChatGPT, and it will automatically create a presentation for you naturally. Nice. And this is probably going to be the name of the game today, is that there was still some work that I had to do to polish, but it's still pretty cool to be able to put a topic into some kind of application for it to automatically create a presentation, naturally needing some work. Also, all of the images, you might be like, that's an interesting choice of image. All of the images
spent hours trying to find them, Alex.
All of the images are automatically generated through AI using DALL-E 2. So don't blame me for my choice. The choices. I just think it's fascinating that the fact that this is a totally new image you're going to be seeing on each of these slides, generated through artificial intelligence. And I think, again, part of the theme today will be, don't judge it too much exactly on where it is now, but also kind of, I think, understanding what trend we're on. So that's my proviso for, and actually, I'll probably also say that almost all of the text was also automatically generated using AI. I was using ChatGPT itself to help me find some of the points, or at least I would provide a paragraph. I've written a blog on this, and being able to get bullet points from ChatGPT too. So already you're starting to get hints of, hey, this sounds like a pretty clever chatbot, and that's kind of the big deal, is that it's incredibly versatile, right, Herbert?
Absolutely. It's like having a free assistant by your side,
Yeah,
researcher, assistant,
yeah.
kind of, yeah. And
Magic
that's how you should
hats.
use it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So again, what is the difference between this and sort of previously? It really delivers exceptionally high quality results. Like, okay, not necessarily perfect compared to, let's say, an expert human or a highly skilled professional with some things, but if it can do 60 to 70% of the job in 10 seconds, that's a huge leverage that I think people can take advantage of. And so, again, a really opportune time to talk about this technology, as I think it's probably going to have possibly the most meaningful impact on the world this year.
Yeah.
Is there anything I've sort of overlooked there with sort of the explanation, or at least introducing this, Herbert? Or actually, if you have any questions of those listening in, please pop them in the chat.
Yeah, I think I mean GPT is really only kind of one of the applications, AI applications out there, and this whole the whole wave of AI tools and software is really just starting. And you will be seeing literally AI for every single problem that you could imagine popping up. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think once you start seeing some examples, you'll kind of get the aspect that I think is fundamental for this technology to fly, which is just how natural the language is, both in how you can talk to it and what conversation or chats you get back. It's pretty impressive. So what are some of the applications of ChatGPT? Naturally, when we're talking, and particularly since this is for language leaders, it's also probably thinking from an education and teaching perspective, but also possibly putting on your kind of marketing and administrative hat, how many tasks and jobs this can actually do for you. It's incredibly versatile to kind of automate a lot of these tasks or get them done in real time or like within 20, 30 seconds, getting some jobs that would otherwise take you or your assistants or helpers hours. It can personalize language learning experiences, automate proficiency evaluations or kind of scoring and kind of marking, which is pretty cool. So streamlining that sort of grading, and then also you can generate games, quizzes, content, all sorts of things. What are some of the other applications that might be relevant to education, Herbert?
Yeah, I mean, especially for teachers, creating like personalized learning materials, lesson plans, activities, ideas for students. Yeah, a lot of material. So all that research and lesson planning has gotten much easier now with tools like this. But of course, when we're talking about sales and marketing, from writing your emails to blog posts to doing an SEO strategy, keyword research, writing Facebook, Google ad copy, basically everything like that. You've got to know the foundations, and you can't just ask them simple ChatGPT simple questions. We'll get into that. But yeah, those are a lot of use cases.
Yeah. What I thought we might do is we'll go into some of a couple of examples, ones that I've actually done myself, and then I think maybe we can kind of nurse a few more of like how you might, the kinds of things that you can really get out of this tool. Sure. So this is an example of how you can use it to create, for example, new exam questions to be able to use with students. And actually, I got Willem, so our head of education at LearnCube, to kind of write me one since he's got the most experience. And so he really asked, this was relating to Cambridge assessment of English, can you write us some practice questions? And this is kind of what it came out with. And actually, it was pretty good. And that's kind of how ChatGPT works in a way. You can ask us things that you would probably exactly how you would ask a human. And it kind of intuits things much better probably than humans. And it's also got access to almost all of the web, the internet's almost all of human knowledge up to a certain point. And so it can create some really great results. And so it did so in this case. But the next aspect that's quite unique about ChatGPT is this idea of layering. And so you can see in this example, I was like, hey, write me this multi-choice question. It did so in literally seconds. That was pretty cool. And then you can go, rather than sort of repeat the question or kind of have to copy and paste all those sorts of things, I was just like, hey, can you do this again for the theme of football? A lot of the time when we talk about personalization, we often think about, hey, this person's kind of like going to be more interested in these kinds of themes than these other kinds of themes. And so football was kind of a natural one that a lot of people share. Brilliant. Let's get some examples that are all about that particular topic. And you can just think of how motivating this could actually be for students to get this real sense of the personal touch when it comes to generating content. And just one example of it. What are some of the other examples you've seen, Herbert, in the teaching space?
In the teaching space, to be completely honest, I've been testing a lot on marketing stuff.
Let me you do the next bit, then I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the other sort of topics we've tried to put in. Things like lesson plans were definitely one, so you can really kind of describe the context of the students that you're trying to teach, what your goal is, and rather than kind of explain, hey, I want it to do all these things, that's what ChatGPT would do for you, is provide that lesson plan. Now, again, will it be perfect? Probably not. Will it be pretty good? Actually, quite likely. Again, it's one of those experiences that it does feel slightly magical, doesn't it, Herbert? And then like, how is this doing this? So
seems
quickly?
A little scary, right? And the thing is, you want to get specific with ChatGPT and give it context. For example, for language teaching, you would write, please generate a 45-minute lesson plan for a high school Spanish class on X theme. And then you can go from there. And if it doesn't spit out the correct or what you're looking for, then it's about layering and getting deeper into the nuances of what you actually want the activities to look like. And do you want a listening activity, a speaking activity? And it's actually quite magical what the output is. And we're only in version 1 of it, or version 3 actually, but
3.5.
3.5. But I guess the first wave of mass market. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So again, we're sort of seeing how this could be really beneficial and save teachers a lot of time in the planning aspect. It can save also people a lot of time in terms of the marking and correction aspect. I had some really interesting kind of chats before where I would deliberately make sort of spelling errors, and it wouldn't just be like spelling error here, X, Y, and Z. It would like tell me what the spelling error is or what the grammar error was and why. And I was just like blown away with how it was so naturally explaining these things to me. Again, all of this is done in text, but this idea of like prompt response is a really key part of understanding what ChatGPT does. And also this idea of layering those prompts, a prompt being, can you do this thing for me? And I think one of the other things to remember is you can regenerate, you can just keep on asking it things. It's not like a human assistant. It's like, really, you want me to do this for the 19th time? It's not going to tire. You can ask it 20 times, 30 times what you want it to do. But the weird thing is, so often it gets things probably right in the first 2 or 3 attempts. And usually the second and third attempts, it's when you're actually layering on like improvements to what you want it to do. And again, you're not having to be super specific. You can be quite high level about, hey, I want the tone to change, or I want these different things to happen. So let's then go into probably the area that you've definitely been working on, Herbert. Let's talk about using ChatGPT for marketing. I just use this as a quick example of, like, for example, for LearnCube, I was like, hey, can you tell me, all the things that LearnCube does uniquely, and amazingly, it was somehow had all this information, which is kind of
Yes, it
scary in
does.
itself.
Up
It
to
was like, hey,
2021, it does have information about
it
everything.
certainly does. It certainly does. So, I was like, hey, I want you to, tell me all the reasons why LearnCube kind of is a better solution for language educators compared to, say, Zoom. It did like a bullet points, and then I was like, cool, I want you to use that to create a 100-word ad to use for Facebook. I want it to be X, Y, and Z. And it came out with this, and I was like, yeah, is it perfect? Is it, it's pretty good.
But it's pretty good. And
Yeah.
this is the thing. It's fantastic for brainstorming, for getting ideas and inspiration, and especially when it comes to ad copy, emails, promotional materials, you will need to have a human touch. You will need to go over it and correct it and refine it. But as a draft, I think this is pretty amazing. And one thing that I see that you did used very well is include adjectives in your prompts. So punchy, friendly, inspiring, cool, witty, and adding those type of adjectives will help ChatGPT to spit out, content that matches that. When it comes to like ad copy and marketing emails, it is an advantage to know about specific marketing formulas or copywriting formulas that work. And so you can prompt ChatGPT, for example, to say, hey, please use the PAS, or the problem, agitate, solve formula to write a 100-word Facebook ad for my intensive English language course in Malta, for example. And once you know these formulas, it'll get even better, because then it's using proven methods and proven strategies that we know work in copywriting and marketing, and structuring it in that way.
And the kind of crazy thing is you don't have to explain what those terms mean.
No. Well, first of all, if you don't know about the terms, you can ask it first. Give me 5 of the best copywriting structures or formulas. And that's your first prompt. Using these 5 copywriting formulas, create a 500-word email newsletter about XX.
And I think that's really powerful. I've already really enjoyed that actual experience where I'm like, I don't actually know enough about that. And instead of me kind of scrolling through Google, and I guess that's probably important at this point to kind of, what's that comparison? I mean, the comparison is either you or somebody else is going to have to write in a search term, get the right search term to begin with, to be able to get a bunch of results, go through each of those results on Google, go through the websites, have a look, particularly when it comes to marketing, might be like scroll through to find templates or those sorts of things. Whereas ChatGPT could theoretically get you to the answer, not the answer, the one that you actually, put on your ad, but very close to it, within that sort of 10 to 20 seconds, time period. And I just find that kind of blows my mind, how important that is.
And especially when it comes to writing for marketing, copywriting, there are some other software, some other tools that are excellent and already have these formulas and copywriting strategies built into their systems. So if you're interested, something like copy.ai or Jasper.ai are fantastic marketing tools for writing emails, blog posts, newsletters, etc.
I think that's a really great point you have there, Herbert, on these very specific AI results. I don't know how. I think it's because ChatGPT kind of has got everyone interested in it, and now everyone's going back and seeing, hey, what's already there. And so, for example, Copy and Jasper, they've been around for a while, but probably just haven't had the headroom because people are like, oh, no, it's not going to be that good. And then once you've got like a mainstream example where it is working for you, like, oh, maybe I can kind of look into these other programs which are like specifically trained to be exceptionally good at these particular tasks. And actually you see that even in the image generation with DALL-E, but then there's like, if you look on Google now, there's like 10 others that
Of course. Yeah.
They look like they're sprung up overnight, but they've probably been going for quite a while. But now they've kind of got this, both their time in the light, but also probably a significant technological improvement happening over just, it seems like, in the last 3 months.
Yeah, I think the very interesting kind of area will be in terms of video AI. I came across a tool called Synthesia,
That's
where
right.
basically you can put in your script and choose avatars very human-like that will, you know, read from the script like a human, and then you can change the language. I mean,
wow, yeah.
that's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And a bit scary, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was watching.
that's where we're going.
It's a really good point on that, because it kind of shows how these technologies are starting to layer on top of each other as well. Likewise, I saw something similar to the one that you've mentioned there, Herbert, where the video, you basically can take a picture, it will then through AI automatically create, you know, effectively a video from that person theoretically. Now, when it's done, it still looks a bit jarring. I'm like, I don't know if I believe it. But the point here was not like, is it perfect? The point was like, if you're wanting it to get to a certain level, like you can do that. And it was really the trade-off, right? That you can get that done in minutes rather than what you would otherwise have to do in hours.
And the cost
that's right. And the ability to make it multilingual is not something you could do if you literally had the same person. They can't speak a bazillion languages, which theoretically technology can do. And I think the combination when, for example, I think with ChatGPT, you can see in this example, very text-based. I write something, I get something written back. And what we're seeing now, and particularly there are technologies such as Zapier, which can allow certain applications to talk to each other. It means that you can get the prompt done in text that comes back to you in text, but then that gets converted into a video using, for example, Synthesia, which we were talking about before. And so suddenly something that would, you know, take literally however many hours of manpower is done within minutes, with all the natural language coming from something like ChatGPT. Pretty fascinating.
It is very fascinating.
So let's keep on going through and understanding what are the concerns then with this, because I think at this point we've probably got a few people going, oh, what's happening here? So first of all, these are the kind of, I think, questions that are worth raising, and then let's talk about how realistic they are and kind of what our sort of sense of likelihood is that it's a big problem or a small problem. But some of the ones that even ChatGPT brought back to me was like, hey, what if it made it easier for students to plagiarize? Now, remember, all of my most of my content is actually made from them, so if there's something wrong or a bit off, it's ChatGPT doing the work, but it's still not bad, right? It understands that, hey, it could make it really easy for students to plagiarize, meaning pass off their own work as, pass off ChatGPT's work as their own. And maybe let's stop on that for a moment, because I think that's the one that got, first of all, people really kind of saw the concern there. And actually, we had a question even just now on like, are you supposed to credit ChatGPT when you're creating content using it, or should people present as their own work? And literally that is what I guess in essence it's like, is that plagiarism? And let's start off with, is it making it easier for students to plagiarize or pass off work that they didn't do? I would say yes is the
absolutely
answer, right?
There are already websites where you can get an essay done, 10,000 word essay done, and it's undetectable that it's plagiarized. You know, there's plagiarize free. University lecturers are going to have a hard time very soon this semester.
Well, I think that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later as well, but like, you can see what the implication is. If you can pass something off, that if you can put something in the ChatGPT, get an essay that you got asked to do, let's say last year you got asked to do an essay of 500 words, I want you to write on this topic, and it took you hours to do. And then the student this year has the option of putting that same question into ChatGPT and in 30 seconds getting the 500-word essay, and then spending the rest of the hours playing PlayStation or doing whatever else. They have a multitude of other things that they may want to be doing. And that incentive is pretty strong. Again, not for everybody, but for a large proportion of students, I don't think that's something they would miss if they can get away with it.
No, I'm sure students are already using it, like
Yeah.
even primary school, high school students. So I guess teachers, the education system is going to have to adapt to how to set homework, and maybe it'll turn into more presentations, maybe something that is that you cannot plagiarize. But yeah, it's a difficult time, I guess, for higher education.
Yeah, and so let's talk on that as well at the end. I think we can have a really interesting discussion on what is the implication, and maybe how can that be dealt with. But I would say, is that a concern? Yes. Second concern is, will students therefore just rely on these chat or AI kind of technologies to complete their work instead of really sort of developing their own skills? And this is one that maybe on that surface seems like, oh yeah, it really could do that. But again, I think the bigger question is, how does this transform education? Particularly if education is based on assessment, I think this massively changes the game.
Yeah.
But it really depends how much it's used and what it's used for. Maybe similar to like, actually, I don't know if this is the right example. Herbert, maybe fact check me on this, but I also think about like map reading, right? Like with Google, do you notice, have you ever pulled out a map and been like, oh, geez, I wish I could just put this into Google Maps rather than pull out an actual map and try and get from A to B? But
I don't think I've pulled out a real map since I was a kid, but
it may shock you how poorly, so I can actually imagine the more you rely on an AI technology, your skills just change. But then I think that comes down to the implication of this co-creation trend, which I think is definitely on the tips of everyone's tongues, which is ChatGPT doesn't do all of the work for you. You kind of have to modify and shape what the responses are. And in a way, and that kind of gets to the first question on plagiarism, is that plagiarism if you've done all the work of kind of molding this end result? The answer, for some people be yes, and the others, for other people, maybe no. But the end result might be a lot better using a tool like this for a lot of people. So worth kind of keeping in mind. Third concern that ChatGPT told me was like, hey, is this going to perpetuate inequality? What's your take on this, Herbert?
Give me an example, Alex.
Well, I think it's really talking about, first of all, ChatGPT is probably unlikely to stay free forever. Like, it's got to be using so much money every time I'm using it. I'm sure it's, there's a cost aspect that happens when you kind of use that much processing power. When that no longer is free, does that then create a haves and have-nots? And then also, particularly, I mean, you mentioned two examples of like specialist software for marketing, right? There's going to be similar specialist software for potentially essay writing or various other things that might be to do with education. And so you can kind of foresee that there's the free version, which is either full of ads or some other way just not quite as good, compared to something that you pay maybe quite a lot more for, but gives you that edge. And I'm kind of curious, could that perpetuate inequalities? Possibly, just like every other tool, maybe.
Sure. I mean, up until now, there are professional essay writers that you can pay as well to do your essays for you manually. But I guess this speeds up the process. Yeah, I think there's always going to be that. The technologies change, the world changes, but there will always be slight inequalities. I think that's just the way it is, and it's about embracing the new technology. You're not going to be able to rid the world of it, so we just have to accept it and see how we can integrate our education system into it and make the most out of it.
And I think that's probably again going to be the central message from us. is if you can't change it, you kind of have to leverage and make the most of it.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably, let's talk more about this last point is, you know, a lot of teachers might be going, you know, am I going to be out of a job? You know, like, what does this mean? And again, like, let's talk about that in the implications section, but it is definitely a concern that I think not just teachers have, but accountants may have, lawyers may have, students certainly that are going for their first jobs may have. And I don't think it's invalid, but it may not be as bad as you think. And I think particularly in language education, I'm particularly optimistic. So again, let's talk more about this, and maybe those that are with us live, if you want to kind of put in your own thoughts in the chat, would love to raise that in our conversation section at the end. Let's talk then about, okay, we've got these concerns, but you know, there's also some pretty significant limitations of ChatGPT currently. This is again only one AI technology that's available, but if we look at it, let's talk about what it is and not. So first of all, it's restricted to the language and code that was used when it was released. It's unlikely to be free forever, although it is free currently. Also, currently, it's exceptionally unreliable to use because so many people are trying to get as much as they can out of the tool that it's struggling to kind of scale up and stick with it. So I know of many people that are trying it as we speak and keep on getting errors. That is something that everybody is experiencing at the moment, so don't worry. It can't produce video, sounds, or images, although other AIs can do that. It can be easily confused. When I say, actually, I would probably change that. I think it can be confused, but I don't know how easily it can be confused. I've put in some fairly vague prompts and it's still come up with something fairly useful, but it certainly can be confused if you kind of change the prompts all over the show. Admittedly, though, I would say I've been amazed at how like I've gone through a chat where it's like I've started asking it, you know, how does this work? It's told me sort of history. It's almost then become an English teacher. It's then becoming my Spanish teacher. It's then, you know, gone into a marketing assistant. Like that versatility has been pretty impressive. And I haven't found it too confused as long as the prompts are quite clear. Like, hey, I want you to be acting like this at this particular moment.
Exactly.
The outputs, though, I think I got this from another blog, but I thought this was good wording, which is just, you know, left to its own device, it generally churns out a fairly formulaic kind of result. How's that align with your thoughts, Herbert?
Yes, which is why I said you got to know the formulas and ask it to use specific formulas, especially when it comes to copywriting and marketing, because usually the output for copywriting is quite wordy, long sentences, and you really want to keep that short and punchy.
So I would definitely feel that that's a limitation, but again, we've also got to put that into the context of it does things grammatically perfect, which is more than a lot of people can do. And it does a fairly good job. And again, that's kind of its power, is not in the, is it perfect, but is it good enough? Sometimes, and I think this is an area that I definitely believe is sometimes the responses are inaccurate or they're out of date, misleading, incomplete, maybe offensive, but you don't know which ones.
Right.
Unless you know the content itself, right? Like I've passed some, because I'm not a language teacher by profession, I've passed this to one of my head of education, you know, and some of the things are like, it's not actually, you know, that's not true, or that's only a kind of half truth. And I guess this is the kind of concern as well I would have, Herbert, which is if you rely on it too much, you stop fact checking it, and you kind of, it's sort of like maybe Wikipedia or even Google. If you just base your opinions on whatever's on the front page of Google, that's only going to get you so far, and it may be what's popular, but not what's actually true. So I think the fact that you don't really know where ChatGPT has got its information from makes that quite a big leap of faith, and I think can get you into some tricky places.
I think so. That's why got to proofread it, and especially if you're touching on sensitive subjects, whatever, with numbers, data, hard data, then you definitely want to fact check that.
Yeah. And also the fact that its data is only from, it says Q4 2021, right? So that's over a year old. It's that information. So if you're asking for anything recent, the current chat, it's not going to be working for you because it's not been trained on that particular data set. And it describes what it's been trained on is like pretty much, I get the impression it's like the internet itself before that day, which is a lot of data, but yeah, pretty impressive, but still not complete when you think about it. So let's then talk about how it can help educators. We've kind of gone through the limitations and the concerns that we have in it. And I kind of think this is the last point you had around kind of concerns was like, hey, okay, we can't put this thing back in the box. So how can we make the most of it? And this is the slide that I'd like to talk about, what it can do for, let's start with educators and teachers. Herbert, again, since you come from this, this background as well, any of the items here that you want to kind of talk through?
Yeah, I mean, we already talked through some examples of how it can help teachers, cut down their preparation time, which increases their efficiency, productivity, and hopefully at the end, the student experience. So you would think that with technology like this, and I'm sure that there will be an AI software platform specifically for teachers coming out, very soon, that will kind of change the game for, I don't know, the student experience.
So it's certainly going to open up some time for teachers. Like I know that lesson planning in particular is a real pain. And quite honestly, the ideas, at least what I've seen, and I'm not a teacher, but I've seen in other areas, the ideas were pretty good. And they don't need to be perfect. They just might need to give you enough of a list, and then you pick the best ones and then kind of go deep in those. But again, ChatGPT can help you flesh those out much faster than you'd be able to write or flesh them out yourself, doing things manually and typing them out and that kind of thing. So I think that's pretty fascinating. I definitely think it can help maybe shore up some of the data analysis kind of skills that maybe some teachers struggle with or whatever. You can definitely find an answer through ChatGPT that I think before you were like, oh man, I can Google this, but I don't really know what it's saying. Like, I think you can get a fairly good answer for somebody if they have a question using it. And also this, it doesn't just apply to words. It sounds like you can really kind of put data into it as well, and it can find the results that way as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not so familiar with using numbers and providing data to it, unless you are, Herbert.
Not really, no.
Yeah. But certainly it's going to remove a lot of the repetitive and mundane tasks. And just by being able to generate things so quickly and on the fly, I think it has a lot of value to teachers. And one of the things that I'd heard, I thought was a really great phrase, was right now is as bad as it's ever going to be.
Exactly. Like version 1 of Google.
And the reason for that is it's trained on the model, as we mentioned, it's a limited amount of data. And then secondly, at the moment, everyone's starting to use this platform. All the times that that data is a two-way aspect. It's not just like, hey, I've got the data and I'm going to spit out the same thing. It is learning from every one of those interactions. So it is getting better and better as we go. And if you've got 100,000 marketers and 100,000 teachers, let's call those numbers 20 million marketers and 20 million teachers, like that data is going to get exceptionally good in the not too distant future. So that's definitely how it can help educators. And maybe the rest of our time today, Herbert, we can talk about the sort of implications of this for language schools and language educators. Again, I always find the images that I've put here slightly interesting. Thank you, DALL-E, my AI
assistant.
But yeah, it's quite fascinating.
It works. It works.
It works. But I've put a couple of ideas here, and maybe, Herbert, you've got a couple yourself. But
sure.
The key thing for me is it raises standards. What are the implications? It means that if you're below what ChatGPT can do in terms of writing an essay or writing ad, you can be replaced. I think that's a fair concern. So for me, it's the whole standard changes. Like if you before right now and essay writing or writing copy was an important part of your job, if you can't do that better than ChatGPT, I would say that's a concern.
That is a concern. All the copywriters out there, and we work with copywriters. So that's an issue. That the writing side, the content generation side of things. I think the future will be more in like content creation, but not written form. Video form, and
I think
creative
strategy.
But it's also affecting like kind of what we do as well as a digital advertising agency. So kind of digital ad buying on like actually launching and doing the account structure in Facebook ads or Google ads. The platforms are doing that already for you, automated with AI. So kind of the future of our role really is kind of analyzing the data, making sure that we're creating a strategy that hits the KPIs of the client, and also uncovering creative trends, because that's how I see the future of marketing. But copywriting, email writing, social media management.
Well, I think it has a role, but it just, for me, it's the difference. Like anyone, and it's hard to put kind of grades that we're used to at school into work, but quite honestly, it's the same thing at work. You've got people that are like A+ at writing copy, and those that are that still have a job in marketing writing copy, but they're a C. And anyone that's in that kind of below probably a B now, and probably soon below an A, that job's may not exist, because you're not going to be better than the alternative, which would be ChatGPT. So I think you have to kind of raise the game and therefore find whatever role is great for you. But I think this is a point where we should really kind of alleviate the kind of concern that maybe teachers may be having, which in language education in particular, which is who we're kind of talking about today, that is a relationship-based experience. And so I don't really see, if you were using an app to learn a language, then I think ChatGPT could theoretically be a competitor for it, right? Because it's like, I wasn't using a human before, I'm not using a human now, and I might be getting a different experience that I might like more than something else. But it's still not going to recreate this relationship. Or a lot of the time people choose teachers because they provide accountability, confidence, and all of these kind of human traits that technology always struggles to kind of be able to artificially create.
I don't really see a threat to like language education as a whole.
No.
We're learning a language. We want to speak the language, and ChatGPT cannot help us speak the language. It can help us with written tasks. So I see the written part of writing emails in a different language. That can be outsourced now. I mean, we're able to do that with Google Translate. But speaking, oral skills, listening skills are going to be even more important now. So I think that's a good thing.
Totally agree. So even when you think of like the technologies of kind of text to video and those sorts of things, again, when you miss the kind of human element, they do fall flat. And actually, any of the videos that I have seen, by the way, there is a tell. You can kind of like, it doesn't feel perfect, and you can't build a relationship with a bot that you can kind of create with a relationship. So teachers feel comfort in what you're doing. But probably what I would say, if you have, and this won't be many, and probably none of you listening in, but if you were boring and not very creative with your teaching, like ChatGPT totally would be a better option. But I think you could say it of almost any other technology, right?
Sure.
It certainly opens up new ways to teach, but particularly assessment is fascinating, Herbert, because if I looked at the way we assess, it's usually things like reading comprehension, listening comprehension, and writing, like 3 out of the 4 are things that actually ChatGPT is pretty good at. Maybe not the listening comprehension, but if you kind of convert the listening into a transcript, then it's amazing.
Very true. It'll be interesting to see what happens to assessments and tests, especially, a lot of them are online now, whether that be kind of IELTS or any of the Cambridge tests. What's going to happen? It'll be interesting to see how they react and adapt to that.
I think a lot of those technologies already, the ones that are doing online assessments, like they're ensuring that you can't kind of have multiple windows open. And so they're already kind of cover it. Like they've always been tools that theoretically people could access online. So that I'm less convinced that will change so much. But for me, the thing that's changed is the motivation, right? Like if you have no motivation, like if a big part of the course is that you're able to write exceptionally well, if ChatGPT can do the writing better than most of us can, where is the incentive and the motivation for people to learn to be excellent, unless they're going to be beyond ChatGPT's kind of capabilities, is kind of what's the point? And I think that's a fascinating aspect, is does that rob motivation to do those tasks, and how important are those tasks?
Very true.
We'll find.
We'll see. Keep you updated.
But
it'll be an interesting year.
It certainly will be. But I think this was from Miriam, a friend of mine who's also an education consultant. This really will change pretty much everything, and that it changes how we create learning, how learners learn, how we create, and also how we give feedback. Like all of these things are impacted by this technology. Now let's have a look if we have any last questions. So actually this was kind of on that last point of,
I think so.
If it's so tempting for students to put through their writing tasks through ChatGPT, then what's the point in them developing those writing skills? I think there's a fair question. I think that the real answer is that you still absolutely have to have good communication skills to be a working professional in whatever you do. So you have to build those skills, and you can't rely on ChatGPT to do this all the time, because there's this could answer that question. If you can always access it, why would you
can? I mean, it can't. There are plugins with your email provider now, so it could answer all of your emails for you, or at least provide you a draft with your emails. But
maybe that's a fair enough point.
Written communication. I would like to think that written communication, the fine art of written communication, will not die out too much, but maybe it'll be enhanced and just improved.
I think one thing that's very clear for me is that the ability to read and comprehend and understand something and then turn that into something else, and being an editor is the #1 skill for writing now, because you no longer have to be the creator, the generator, but you do need to be exceptional at editing. And I don't know if you can be a great editor without having developed that skill yourself.
The foundational.
My inkling is that it's very otherwise, if I've always been effectively, it's like the humans being trained on ChatGPT responses. I'm only as good now as ChatGPT because I've literally been trained as a human. Like that's what a good email looks like, because ChatGPT says, rather than thinking critically about, hey, what actually do I need to get across here? So I imagine that people that pass all of these tasks onto technologies will find themselves not very good, because they're not going to be very good editors or assessors of that content. And those that can do that very quickly. And that's why I think fast reading is going to be exceptionally important, because you need to be able to see a response quickly, understand what it is, and then know what next. So it's pretty interesting. But this, I think, brings us really to a close today, Herbert. Is there anything else that you can think of that we need to cover?
Don't think so. I mean, it's such a fascinating topic, and there are so many roads you can go down, and also so many tools. Literally everything is out there now. So I would suggest our listeners to do a little bit of research to see if they can automate, outsource a couple of their mundane or repetitive tasks to some sort of AI tool. Or enhance what they're already doing.
Have a play, and I think again, assess for yourselves rather than sort of take our word for it, and really stretch the abilities. Put in some bad prompts, but also one of the things I think you can do is Google. I do say Google how to write great prompts. I think that was really like the difference between writing a bad prompt and a good prompt is it's just such a fundamental kind of difference in the responses you get. So very much develop those skills, and I think you'll get a lot out of this technology. And don't be afraid for your jobs. Instead, really focus on how to leverage it and be the best at being your own unique self. So I'll leave you with that, and all the best.
Catch you next month.